Hello, welcome back to the channel. So we're just clearing up on the rest of the unit reviews within Necron Codex. There's a couple left to go now. Today is based on the Cryptothralls. So be sure to drop a sub below, as once these reviews are done, we're going to start on some tactic videos and some list building videos, because it's all well and good telling you what's good and what's not, but your list does need some sort of balance to it, especially if you don't know what you're up against. And even if you do, you will likely need a bit of everything to be sure you can combat what your opponent has to offer. So back to the Cryptothralls. We did a review with them back when the box set came out, but this was pre-Codex, as the Indominus box set was at the start of 9th edition and the Necron Codex came out shortly afterwards. So we did the review in that gap, and a few things have changed. One being the Cryptex, for example, don't give a +1 to the reanimation protocols roll anymore, which is quite a big deal. Okay, so these guys are 2 power level or 40 points. You're going to get 2 models, no more, no less. So you're getting 2 bucket bots for 40 points. They're classed as an elite choice, but as you'll see in the abilities section, that they won't take up a slot if you've got a Cryptech unit to go with them. As for keywords of note, they do have the Dynasty keyword, they have Canoptic unit so they can interact with all sorts of things there. They are an infantry unit, so not a huge list of keywords, but they don't really need it. Stat wise, they've got movement of 5 inch, weapon skill 4+, ballistic skill 4+, strength 5, toughness 5, wounds 2, attacks 3, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. So surprisingly tough, they don't look any beefier than a warrior. These stats also get buffed with their ability, which we'll get onto now. So the first one is Bound Creation, which as mentioned at the start of the video, if your army includes a Cryptech model, then these Cryptothralls will not take up a detachment slot. So they almost feel like a 40-point add-on to your Cryptech unit now. They've got all the standard stuff, living metal and command protocols, and also reanimation protocols too, because they're 2 wounds per model. The more unique abilities are Protectors, which is an aura for Cryptechs within 3 inches of the unit. Those Cryptechs cannot be targeted by ranged attacks. Now these Cryptechs already have the Lookout Sir rule in play if there's 3 infantry units nearby or 1 vehicle, but the Protector's ability supersedes that, as firstly even just 1 Cryptothrall that can be left in the battle will use this, and secondly weapons that ignore the Lookout Sir such as snipers cannot target the Cryptech, as this is not a Lookout Sir ability. The last ability is Systematic Vigor, which is pretty awesome. So this is if a unit is within 6 inches of the Cryptech model, then your Cryptothralls will change their weapon skill and ballistic skill to a 3+, and on top of that, their attack characteristic goes from 3 to 6 each. You'll see in the moment when we cover the Wargear that this is pretty decent. So onto the weapons, and each model is equipped with a Scouring Eye and Scythe Limbs. Now the Scouring Eye is a ranged weapon. This has a range of 12 inches, it's a 2-shot pistol that is strength 5, -2 AP and single damage. It can of course be fired into ongoing combats. It's not going to be game changing, but it is nice to have 4 strength 5 attacks that should hit on 3s and likely wound on 3s as well. Now it's only likely going to remove a single wound from a Space Marine, but if you look at what a Space Marine costs, maybe 20 points, then you've just removed about 10 points there in a single shooting phase. So already you've returned about a quarter of your points what you spent on these guys already. At weaker units you're more likely to kill 2 models, although they of course are a lot cheaper. Now this is only 12-inch range and you won't be using it every turn, but you may get to use it in a couple of turns, but that's fine. They don't only just rely on their ranged attacks. Now onto the melee weapon, they've got Scythe Limbs. It's strength user, making it strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage. Now due to the Cryptechs being by, you're going to be hitting on 3s with a total of 12 attacks. From those 12 attacks you're going to average 8 hits, causing about 5 wounds against toughness 3 and toughness 4 models. That -1 AP puts Marines on a 50-50 save, which is a 4+, so you should be killing at least 1, maybe 2 if you're a bit lucky with the roll, as the exact average is 1.3. Guardians you can be killing at least 4. So just taking the points cost again of that Marine model that you've just destroyed, let's go with 1.5 dead models for ease of maths, and add this to the previous half a dead model that you shot out with the pistols. So these guys are roughly killing 2 Space Marine models per turn, which is pretty much point recovery right there, you're getting your points back. You're not going to be in combat for 5 rounds, so of course you can't just make out that you're going to remove 100 points from your opponent's army in a game, but even in a single turn you're doing about 40 points, so as mentioned you're getting your points back in a single turn. So in terms of damage it's a no-brainer, but of course they can be focused on. Now when you add the Protector ability on top of that, it makes that 40 point spent even better. These guys do have other uses as well. They can do actions, they can hold objectives. Even if the Cryptech is already holding it, adding 2 more for the bodyguard on a contested objective could be a thing. So really useful. Let's talk about the Cryptechs for a moment. We did a best Cryptech video not too long ago where we went through all the different scenarios for each of the 4 unnamed Cryptechs and tried to work out which is the best option. Find that on our Necron playlist if you haven't seen that already. So you've got to ask yourself, what's the most effective way of using these and who with? So there's one that I'd say is not my preferred option, which is the Plasmancer, as this needs to be in your opponent's face nice and early and has access to either a Veil of Darkness relic or the Arcana that allows him to deep strike. Now your Cryptothralls don't have that access to deep strike, and they cannot be taken with the Veil of Darkness as they're not characters or a core unit. So they're either going to be starting out on foot or perhaps in reserves if you preferred, but I don't think that's making best use of your Cryptek if you're holding them in reserves purely because of the Cryptothralls. So really these guys should be in a deployment zone from turn 1. Maybe at a push you can put them in a Night Scythe. So you've got the other 3 generic options left here. The Chronomancer is a valid option as he's quite versatile. He can either do what the Plasmancer does with the Veil of Darkness, getting into enemy lines with a core unit such as Warriors or Lich Guard, but this of course won't combo with those Cryptothralls. But if that Chronomancer was to instead be a defensive support unit, maybe giving in-1 saves to units on your half of the board like Scarabs for example or Warriors, then 100% take the Cryptothralls, it's a no-brainer. A Technomancer is also quite a flexible unit, could do either of the jobs too, but if he does stay back, he's not only healing nearby units, but he can also buff Canoptic units with the control node, giving a +1 to their hit rolls, and with the Canoptic Cloak he can be healing D3 wounds per turn to nearby units. Now going back to that control node, which is a +1 to hit for Canoptic units, this does stack with the Systematic Vigor, which is quite a common error to why people think it can't. Usually you're capped at a -1 to hit or a +1 to hit. If you take a closer look at the ability itself, it's not a +1 to hit, it actually changes the characteristics to Weapon Skill 3 and Ballistic Skill 3. So you can still add +1 to the hit roll, making them hit on 2s in both shooting and melee. Now your damage output is more like 0.7 dead models with the pistols instead of 0.5, and the melee side of things becomes 1.7 instead of 1.3. Doesn't seem like much there, but it's going to give you a more reliable damage output. On top of that, Technomancers heal Warriors regardless of which upgrade they take due to their inbuilt Rites of Reanimation ability, so they're worth protecting. And not only that, the Technomancer will also synergize with other Canoptic units too, such as Scarabs, Spiders, Doomstalkers and whatnot. Now the last generic Cryptek being the Psychomancer, I'm still not quite sold on him, but he would be the type that flies up very slowly up the board and will need protecting, as his debuff abilities require him to be in close range of an enemy unit. You do have a few other named Crypteks within the Codex. You've got Illumina Zaraz, who's fantastic but sometimes struggle to get him in a list as he's quite pricey. He's probably more of a mid-table unit that works well with the Cryptothralls here. He also works well with Warriors, so the combo of all 3 units is quite valid. A 20-man screen is plenty, but those 20 men cannot block snipers like a Cryptothrall can. The last one is Orican the Diviner. Not a great unit to be honest, made our worst 10 units in the Codex video which we did last month. He does give reroll charges and an in-1 save to the unit, so this also works with Praetorians, so they would probably benefit with some bodyguards, but realistically you're not taking Orican the Diviner. So moving away from that, let's start looking at a stratagem that's available to these guys, which is Enslaved Protectors. Using the opponent's charge phase, you select a Canoptic unit, and until the end of the phase, that unit is eligible to perform hero interventions as if they were a character. So it can be useful, it could even prevent your opponent from consolidating or piling into a Cryptek by blocking them off with the Cryptothralls during the hero intervention stage. So the question is quite similar to the Plasma Sight, are these guys worth the points? And again, it's another yes, but only if you don't plan on using Deep Strike on a Cryptek or using a Veil of Darkness with them, as those Cryptothralls cannot follow them. The only way really to push forward with them early in the game would be the Night Scythe as mentioned, or Strategic Reserves. Best option is definitely on foot to take these guys. Now you can actually play quite dirty with these, you can hide your Cryptothralls out of sight, but still within 3 inches of a Cryptek so that neither of them can be targeted. You can actually have a couple of pairs of these guys too. You can have say 2 Crypteks within a list. In fact, you could even argue that having these for 40 points without a Cryptek is a valid option. They're cheaper than a minion of Scarab, so therefore they're the cheapest unit in the Codex, aside from that Plasma Sight, but those things need to be within range of a Destroyer Cult unit, or they'll die, whereas the Cryptothralls don't. So for example, you could have a Chronomancer and a set of Cryptothralls which won't take up an elite slot due to bound creation. Then you could also get another pair of Cryptothralls for 40 points which will take up a slot. But now you've got 4 Cryptothralls that are all going to benefit from being within range of the Chronomancer. And it's 2 separate units of Cryptothralls so they can score points independently. Heck, you can just fill out a Vanguard detachment and just fill up on Cryptothrall units with 1 Cryptek like a Chronomancer. I mean, in theory that's 12 Cryptothralls for just 1 detachment. Okay, that's 240 points. That's a lot of attacks and plenty of wounds. So moving into their rating, this is going to have a similar feel to when we rated the Plasma Sight. It doesn't quite feel like a proper rating, but I'm going to give these guys a 4 out of 5. Probably a bit less without a Cryptek, but the chances are you're going to have a Cryptek if you field these. A 40 point upgrade, that's definitely worth their value. Guys, that's the review for today. Drop a like on your exits and remember to sub if you are new. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.